Hello. This lesson is about practicing a difficult conversation. There are times when we regret things that we've said or done at home or at work. And we tend to have intrusive, judgmental thoughts about that. Like, I really screwed up. I can't believe I did that. Oh, if only I had said X, Y, Z instead. And one of my favorites is you idiot. So these kinds of thoughts are not going to help you improve. There's some research that makes that pretty clear. And it's ironic, but that's our culture, and maybe it's because we've evolved to do that. But our culture encourages this idea of judgment and who's to blame and who's to be punished, and we internalize that into ourselves, and it actually produces more of the conduct that we don't want to happen. So this exercise gives you the opportunity to use those regretful, intrusive thoughts to put it into a role play with your practice partner so that you can do a whole host of things, which I'll get into in a minute, to change you and to change how you interact in the world, and that you can practice this on a specific case-by-case basis with an upcoming situation. Now, part of this, or typically a very common part of this kind of practice of either reflecting upon and recreating within a role play a situation that's in the past that we actually have gone through, or something that we're anticipating and we're dreading in the future. A common component of either of those scenarios, whatever you're practicing with, is the stress response. So the stress response is included in a part of this. And just as a review here, the stress response makes it difficult to think clearly and sequentially, because in brain terms, you drop out of your prefrontal cortex and into the lower brain into a more habitual response and way of engaging with the world. And in the face of the conduct that you're engaging in, when you're in the stress response, you kind of feel powerless to choose. You're swept up in a way that feels like you've lost personal control. And you look back on it and you say, God, why did I do that? I did that again. And I've so many times decided I don't want that. I regret that. I don't seem to be able to change it. And that's because you're triggered. The stress response triggers habitual stress response habits. And those habits, like all habits, once they get triggered, then you go into a routine that delivers whatever outcome it delivers. And in a sense, the brain goes quiet. It goes quiescent is the language that's used in the research. So you kind of sort of, it's still you, but it's like you're not consciously choosing to do the conduct you're doing. It's like there's another part of you, a non-verbal part of you, that's in control of the conduct that you're engaged in. And it's not conscious awareness saying, this is what I want to do in this situation. So this practicing a difficult conversation attempts to return that sense of choicefulness to you in the face of situations that trigger the stress response in you. And then it also helps to drop those, to desensitize you to the stress response to where you don't get triggered. That's the ultimate goal. And so how are we going to change this? We're taking off from the idea of the flight simulator for pilots, and also for the military. More and more is training in simulated real situations as much as possible. And first responders are doing this. Your emergency room doctors and nurses are doing this. It's to try to stimulate you into the stress response, and then for you to be able to choose to, go through what you have planned. And here there's a famous quote about, you don't rise to your level of expectation, you rise to the level of your training. And so this is something that you're going to have to work on with your practice partner. It's not just, you can't just watch this video and then think that you're going to, be able to implement this in your life. This is something that comes from practice. Okay, so how does this flight simulator for difficult conversations work? Okay, you need to have a place a space in which you feel safe, and with a person that you feel safe. They're not gonna ridicule you or make fun of you or tease you. They're not gonna bring it up later, and they're certainly not gonna bring it up in front of other people. You have agreements with them, and you feel safe that they're gonna keep those agreements. Because you're gonna give this person a trigger of something that they can say or do that you believe will trigger the stress response with you in this role play that you're doing with this person. And then you do that, and you learn. It's a two exchange exercise. They say something to you, you respond, and hopefully you respond rather than react. That's the distinction that I want you to understand here, is to respond instead of react. And respond implies, in the way I'm using this word, that you have inserted conscious choice and into what your response is. And so this exercise slows things down so that you get a very stretched out, very regulated, formal way of responding. And so then you choose, and that you can speed that up over time when you practice it. So you start with a low level of stimulus that is not predicted to trigger you, and then you raise the stimulus with you coaching your partner to, facial expression, tone of voice, volume of their voice, body movements, whatever, to trigger you. And then you only want the very beginning of trigger. This is not, can I hold on to, maximum trigger? This is the very beginning of the trigger, so that you can begin to get those early warning signs within your body, and your body will give you those early warning signs. And you want to be at the control of this flight simulator so that you can dial the difficulty up and down, so that this is part of feeling comfortable, feeling safe, and that you want a level of stimulation of trigger that you can work with. Because if you get too much trigger, then it's really not something that you're going to practice with. You're not going to learn from. You're overwhelmed, and then you're not able to practice. But on the other hand, you don't want it to be at such a low level that you don't have any challenge to work with and to learn from. So you dial the difficulty up and down. And this is very much about retraining your nervous system to quickly return to self-connection and centeredness. And this leads to ultimately of desensitizing you to the trigger. So first it's to give you the skills to respond, and then to desensitize you to the trigger. And then, first is to be able to respond effectively in the way you want to the trigger, and then to desensitize you to the trigger. So I think I've covered most of this, but let me just make sure that what kind of skills does this give you? Well, it gives you the skills to be able to identify what's happening in your body in these kinds of situations, to desensitize yourself to the triggers, to return to presence in the face of stimuli that you perceive as a threat to either your psychological or your physical well-being. And this allows you to be at greater choice, to speak and act in ways that you will not regret later, and to act in alignment with your values and not regret your conduct. This is a question here in my notes. Where will I or you see a positive impact as a result of choosing how to act in difficult conversations? Well, the goal here is overall well-being, because when you're stimulated into the stress response and you're doing this several times a day, there's very compelling research that says that that is very stressful and unhealthy for the body. So this is a way of reducing the amount of adrenaline and cortisol and the other stress hormones that gets dumped into your bloodstream, because you're catching it at the very early moment, and you have a strategy, in this case, the self-connection process, to bring you down and to center you. And the self-connection process is very much a part of this practicing difficult conversations. It improves your relationship with your colleagues, and hence the productivity of your team as a whole. And it enhances your ability to engage in interpersonal conflict in a way that's healthier for you and for the people around you, including the people you're in conflict with. And to be in conflict situations in a way that you feel proud or sort of feel good about. And it increases the likelihood that you're going to bring about the results you desire. So this concludes our lesson on practicing a difficult conversation. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope to see you in a video soon.